What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Dermy Wormy, and I'm coming at you with another video. And today we're talking Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, pre and everything like that. And I know I almost read the entire title of the page. It is what it is. But okay, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This is a new game that's coming out. A lot of people are hyped. A lot of people are really interested in it. Final Fantasy VII Remake did well with the people that actually enjoyed it. It did enough goodwill with the people that did enjoy the game, that actually wanted to play the game, that actually cared about the game, that, hey, the sequel to it, a lot of people are hyped for, a lot of people are interested in, and a lot of people really are looking forward to this game. You have the demo coming out right now that a lot of people are playing and enjoying themselves, and hey, have a fun time. Personally, I'm a Final Fantasy VII man. I want my remake to just basically be an upgraded version of Final Fantasy VII, not an entirely new story. That's my issue with all this. That's where I'm going to be at, but I have to accept that the Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth are just two different games. That's what I have to accept, and I have to go from there. So when you accept that they are just different games, different basically just a remix, not a remake, it is something completely different. You can start looking at some of the stuff in a different light. Normally I'm going to be your purist here. I'm always going to be your purist. I'm always going to be the guy that calls it out, calls it as I see it. I'm going to be real honest with you guys. I just don't care. I don't care about the remake. I don't care about Rebirth. They're not the games I wanted. They're something completely different, and that's something that I'm just gonna have to deal with. I might play them eventually, but as of right now, no real care for them. But when you're seeing people come out and say, like, boast about how Final Fantasy VII Rebirth removes Tifa's panties, a useless item, but yet the whole entire scene still plays out the same. You just don't get, her panties as a item that is, again, kind of useless. Yeah, I just have to say it's not that big of a deal because these are entirely different games. These are no longer a one-for-one adaptation. This is something completely different. This is basically Final Fantasy 7.5 is a good interpretation of what these are supposed to be. They are a retelling, a new style of doing it, basically an alternate universe version of what happens in Final Fantasy 7. That's how you have to go with it. But a lot of people are also trying to come out and say that because they are doing this is signs that Square Enix has gone woke. Square Enix is woke. You're having Western influences impact Final Fantasy, Square Enix across the board. It's becoming a bad thing, and this is evidence of them being woke. I have to actually push back because it's starting to look more and more like Square Enix isn't woke anymore and has actually been backing away from what they have been doing over the past few years. Some of those reasons come from things like Forspoken, for example. Forspoken was a game that was panned by audiences across the board. It looked hideous. It was a abhorrent game. The design, the wording, everything about it was just annoying up the wazoo. So it failed miserably, and it failed so hard that even Square Enix quit talking about it. It failed so hard that Square Enix actually took the game and that branch of their entire company and said, you know what, we're shutting this down. We're just Square Enix in Japan from now on. Just Square Enix is solely a Japanese company as of right now. But after failures of things like Forspoken, after failures of things like that Marvel Avengers game that they put out, it doesn't shock me that they're getting out of the actual Western industry. They're getting out of putting out games here they're getting out of America, essentially, is one of their big things. Yes, they are still shipping games to America, but for the most part, they're no longer focusing on making games for America. They're making games for themselves. That's why when you see things like this going on right now, Square Enix is making some big changes. The reason they're having to make big changes is because of the failures of things like Forspoken and the Marvel's games. Because those games were such a massive failures, because they hurt the company so badly. Then on top of that, you have Final Fantasy XIV actually starting to lose player base. They're losing subscribers. They're losing people actually playing that game. Even though Final Fantasy XIV is still a good game, there's just not a lot going on there. It's kind of reaching the end of its actual life cycle. After how many years of it being super popular, people actually engaging with it, and people wanted to do a whole lot with it, it's finally coming to an end, and people are starting to check out, not play any longer, not encourage stuff. So, hey, the company actually has to start making changes, has to start making moves because they're losing money. They can't handle not being this champion anymore. So when you start seeing things like this, Final Fantasy director confirms Cease's chest was tightened because of the ethics department at Square Enix, which is a title headline from 2019. Yes, back when this remake was coming out, they were actually talking about how her chest size is shortened, her chest size is no longer as big. Well, recently we got reports of this going on. Square Enix deletes their ethics department hiring webpage in which censorship is mentioned. That's right, they deleted their censor department. They deleted their ethics department page. They weren't hired. It's no longer there. It's no longer part of their website. And when you actually come over to the Square Enix website, it's gone. They're not hiring for this department anymore. They're not doing anything for this department anymore. And now there's no evidence that the department is fully gone, but there is no evidence that the department isn't fully gone either. They're not hiring for it. So that leads you to believe that, hey, there's something going on here. There's some weird situations going. And again, you had the fact that their Western games failed so miserably, just downright horrifically, that it doesn't really shock me that Square Enix is kind of going back within itself and realizing where it started. It started as a Japanese company. It started as a company putting out good games and focusing on good games. And another evidence to, like, hey, Square Enix Final Fantasy, there's something interesting going on there, and they're probably not as woke as what we want to believe they are. You had this. This is an article that I went over back when I first was starting up my channel, but it's Final Fantasy 16 dev has a terrible answer for why the game is so white. Yes, this was an article from Kotaku. You even had Eurogamer come out and make a whole article denouncing Final Fantasy 16 because it was so white, but they were also completely ignoring the fact that it was set in like a medieval European style, and it was focusing in on that culture. It was focusing in all that, and Yoshi P even came out and defended that. You had Eurogamer making content about this. You had Yoshi P actually come out and basically say that it was a BS thing. It wasn't an actual thing to be talking about. It wasn't an actual issue because we weren't focusing in on those areas. We were focusing solely within the medieval European standards. And yes, you had a bunch of people come out and say there were black people in medieval Europe. They were all over the place, and not really. They really weren't. They were focusing on a certain culture. That was their whole purpose of making this game. And Yoshi P went to war with Eurogamer and Kotaku over this. Yoshi P outright fought back tooth and nail and won those entire arguments. You then had Western video game journalists try to say that the reason Square Enix is facing all these financial losses, all these serious financial issues as of late, it was because of Final Fantasy 16 and all their issues that they were having there. But in reality, it wasn't Final Fantasy 16 and the fact that it wasn't black enough. They completely ignored the fact that they did Forspoken and the Marvels, Square Enix. That's right. Remember, you always have to remember that Square Enix is left west. Square Enix is solely a Japanese-based company now, and I know there's a lot of Japanese-based companies doing a bunch of awful things. Sega is a good example, but when you have them shutting their ethics department, you have them going to war, shutting down their Western branches, you have them going to war with the Western medias and everything like that. You then have them not willing to censor their game for Saudi Arabia and taking the hit there. Starting to paint an interesting picture. It's starting to show you that, hey, maybe they are changing. Maybe they are going back to the way that they used to be, back to the way of just putting out a good story, putting out things that really matter to people. And I know a lot of people also want to try to focus on this. This came out a few weeks ago. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth producer Yoshi Kiyatsa says he's a bit embarrassed by original game's portrayal of social problems, social issues, and cultural depictions. But the thing is, when you actually scroll through what he said, he was actually very much praising the game, talking highly about the game, talking highly about how well they did the game, how well they actually worked throughout this game, and how well they really focused in on this game. And then you actually come down to what he was talking about, like what he was embarrassed by. You kind of get the idea that maybe it wasn't really, all that other stuff. It might have just been how the game played that he was embarrassed by, because you see what it says. In its expansion, in some ways, I was very young and naive in itself. That is learning for us, but at the same time, I do believe that perhaps that is one of the reasons why it was widely accepted. Gyatso relates. It is not perfect, and it's kind of uneven and jagged in its young and naive nature of its depiction. Of course, after more than 25 years, there's a lot of personal learning, changes, and growth. But looking back on it, some parts of it, I'm a bit embarrassed. I'm a bit embarrassed. And that's all he says. He doesn't talk further on what he was embarrassed about. He doesn't discuss what he was embarrassed by, anything like that. He doesn't actually even talk about where he was going with what he was embarrassed on. So you could just sit back and say, hey, it's been 25 years. He was looking back at a game that he once made when he was younger, and it could easily be that he's embarrassed by how the game played. It could easily be that he's embarrassed by maybe some little minor issues they have here or there, which I kind of think the game's 100% perfect, but who knows? He's looking back at his own work and critiquing himself from the past, critiquing a younger iteration of himself. It doesn't even say that he's critiquing how the game is. He's not even doing what Bounding Into Comics is saying that he did. He is not discussing any of the social issues. He's not discussing any of these social problems or the cultural depictions. He's not discussing any of that as being things that he's embarrassed by. He's just saying that he's embarrassed by some of the things they did back in that game. So you don't even know what he's talking about. He doesn't even clarify. He doesn't even discuss it. Literally, it could just be that the game wasn't as what he was looking back at it, and he's like, I can't believe I put that out. It's kind of jagged. The gameplay is just a little weird. That's all you have. There's no real evidence that Square Enix is continuing down this crazy woke path. In fact, there's more evidence to say that Square Enix is stepping away from the crazy woke path. And for all the people that are super excited about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I'm more excited for you guys. Personally, I like my 1-for-1s, and I'm just going to stick with Final Fantasy VII OG all the way. But I'm going to leave it there, guys. Let me get you guys' thoughts on all this down in the comments below. What are your thoughts on Square Enix? Do you think they are still woke? Do you think they're going to continue being woke? Do you think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is going to be woke? Or do you think that they are actually changing the tide? They're actually turning with the times, and they are really, truly becoming more of a Japanese-based game. But again, I'm going to leave it there. Let me get your thoughts on all this down in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it out, friends. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell for every time I put out a new video and go live. And I'll see you all on the next one. Bye for now.